Burke and Wills. They almost made it. They didn't die where most people think. They weren't lost. They weren't wandering blindly through the desert. In fact, they were closer to survival than anyone realizes. And the most disturbing part? They didn't die because Australia was too harsh. They died after they made the right decision, and then undid it. This is the story of Burke and Wills, but not the version you were taught. Ask almost any Australian what happened to Burke and Wills, and you'll hear the same answer. They went into the Outback and ran out of food. It sounds simple, neat, inevitable, but it's wrong. Because if this story were really about the land, it would have ended much earlier. Instead, it ended after hope returned. In 1860, the Victorian government wanted glory. No one had crossed Australia from south to north. No one had proven the continent could be conquered by line and compass. So they assembled the most expensive expedition in Australian history: camels, horses, men, supplies. And in charge of it all, Robert O'Hara Burke, not an explorer, not a bushman, not even a navigator, but confident, commanding, certain. And that certainty would shape everything that followed. From the beginning, things didn't feel right. Too much equipment, too many men, too many opinions. Progress was slow, painfully slow, and Burke grew impatient. So he did something that felt decisive and would quietly seal their fate. He split the expedition. Some men stayed behind, others pushed north, and for the first time, the expedition stopped being united. Burke didn't want comfort. He wanted speed. He pushed ahead with only a handful of men, including William Wills, racing toward the Gulf of Carpentaria. They were exhausted, undersupplied, running on urgency instead of planning. But against the odds, they made it. After months of suffering, they reached the northern mangroves. They had crossed Australia. And then, they turned around. On the return journey, Burke aimed for a supply depot called Cooper Creek. Food, rest, safety. What he didn't know was that the men waiting there, tired, sick, and assuming Burke was dead, had already left. They buried supplies, they marked a tree, and they walked away. Burke and Wills arrived hours later. They missed salvation by less than a day. But here's the part almost no one talks about. At Cooper Creek, Burke and Wills had options. They found the supplies. They weren't immediately doomed. Local indigenous people approached them, the Yandrawanda. They offered food, knowledge, survival strategies refined over thousands of years. And for a while, it worked. Burke and Wills lived, but they didn't listen. They treated generosity as temporary help, not instruction. And when the choice came, they made the wrong one. Instead of staying where food and water existed, instead of following people who knew the land, Burke decided to leave Cooper Creek, to strike out again, into harsher country, away from help. It wasn't desperation, it was pride. And once they left, there was no coming back. Wills weakened first, then Burke. Their journals didn't describe chaos. They described confidence. Confidence that help would come. Confidence they could endure just a little longer. Confidence that killed them. Burke and Wills died days later, not lost, not ignorant, but convinced they were still in control. Burke and Wills didn't fail because Australia was impossible. They failed because they believed leadership meant knowing better. They crossed a continent. They found help. They found food. And then they walked away from all of it. Australia didn't defeat Burke and Wills. They defeated themselves. And that's why this story still matters. Because it wasn't the land that made the final decision. It was them.
Thanks for watching. Aussie Breakdowns for more. Please like and subscribe. Thanks.